Chris Watkin back again with the queen of TikTok for letting agents. We've got Megan 18. Thanks for joining me today, Megan.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. What are the pros and cons of TikTok for letting and estate agents? Talk to me.
Oh, good one. I think pros are definitely that you can reach an audience on like a mass scale.
Okay, I mean, what sort of, how many posts have you put out and in what length of time?
Oh God, I don't know. There's got to be a couple of hundred in my repertoire now.
Okay.
So yeah.
And what sort of numbers are we getting?
So they kind of flip and flop. So I've got some that are like 40,000. I think on average, maybe a couple of thousand normally is probably about right.
Okay. And what made you go for TikTok?
So I'd sat on a social media training course with a lady called Rachel from Property Mark, and she said, "Oh, I think TikTok will be the next thing," and there wasn't really any representation on there. So I was like, "Sure, I'll just give it a crack."
Okay.
So the next day, I filmed a video, 5 things we're looking for when we're valuing your property, and then it just sort of someone asked me a question about dogs, and then it went, and went from there really.
So we talked about pros and cons. The pros is that you can get a lot of people looking at your content. The question is, are they the right sort of, are you doing it to get tenants or landlords?
For me, landlords, and I have got landlords because it's often a question I get asked is, have I made any money out of it? And the answer is yes, I have. I had a portfolio of 4 come off the back of it, which, isn't bad for a couple of minutes every week.
It's not bad, is it?
Not bad at all.
Okay. Do you get landlords from other towns contacting you?
Yes, I do. And sometimes it's a case of directing them to the nearest, quite often through Property Mark, because we've got a bit of a network. So, yeah, quite often I send people up. I'm getting loads of stuff at the moment for people from Manchester, bizarrely.
And what are the cons?
You do get a certain type of person on TikTok. So I get a lot of weird comments. I do a lot of blocking on TikTok.
Okay.
So that's
what sort of weird things are we talking about?
Just a bit pervy, Chris.
What, suggestive comments?
Suggestive comments. That's a much nicer way of putting it. Suggestive comments. Yes, I get a lot of comments from blokes that are just completely unrelated to anything.
In public?
Oh, well, TikToks, you can't message somebody directly through TikTok. Right. But the problem I've had is that they then kind of breach into other areas. What
sends you messages, private messages through other social media platforms?
Yeah, so maybe naively, when I set up my TikTok, set it up Megan 18, lettings in a nutshell.
Yep.
I'm an Arla rep. I was quite honest about who I was.
So we can find you quite easily on the social, can't we?
Absolutely.
On the Facebook and the LinkedIn.
So then I had one guy that messaged me and said, "How about you come meet me at the Walkabout, which is the pub opposite my office?" And I was like, why do you know where I work? And it soon became apparent that actually it was quite, an 18 is not exactly
I love it. It sounds like a 1960s child's character from one of the Thunderbirds or something, Joe 90.
Well, it's funny, I was almost called Austin. I thought it sounded like a car, Austin 18, if I was a boy. Anyway, we digress. But yeah, so they found me on other platforms and sort of that made me feel a little bit concerned.
How did you deal with that?
Buried my head in the sand a little bit, blocked them, and hoped it would go away, which it did, that particular case. But then, I do get a lot of comments and I get a lot of things that hit my Instagram, which obviously is easier for people to contact you on, and LinkedIn.
How have you dealt with that? Do you think that's because you're a woman?
Yes, I do, because I don't know anyone else that has that same issue. So Ian Macbeth from Avocado, lovely chap.
Love him.
We're from the same town. And we both are really active on TikTok, and he gets a very different response to what I get. And so, yeah, I can only put it down to being a woman.
So what else do they send you then?
I'm trying to think of a polite way of putting it.
Okay, then.
Certain photos.
What of themselves?
Yeah,
appendages.
Yes, perfect wording for it.
So men are sending you pictures of their appendages.
Yeah. And I would just like to say, nobody wants to receive them.
This is estate agents, is it?
Yeah. So I've had people from big companies not necessarily big names, but companies. Yeah.
Okay, that's weird.
It's super weird, and I always kind of laughed it off because I just thought it was a bit
Okay.
like
I
strange.
mean, it's not Tinder, is it?
It's
You're
it's
a
not.
married woman here.
We're talking about LinkedIn here.
All right, well, there you go.
It's obviously, yeah. So I actually interestingly had this conversation on the Women in Estate Agency Facebook group, and I said, how would you deal with that? And without like any differences, they all said they would report it. Now, for me, I was very much like, well, I don't want to ruin anyone's career. But every one of them said, well, if they did that to you in the street, you would call the police. And it's true. If somebody was to flash you in the street, you would call the police. But for some reason on social media, it doesn't feel like that. That seems like a big reaction.
So how have you dealt with that? And what does Mike think? Your
I mean, to be
husband?
fair, we just laugh. But to be fair, we laugh about it.
Okay.
I am quite hard to offend, to be fair. But it isn't nice to do it. And the worst ones for me are when I've put up informative content and it's come off, things have happened off the back of that. Because I just think, well, I'm here trying to, use my voice, and you're here ignoring it.
Have you got better at dealing with these people?
I just block them, to be honest. Now I just block and move on, because I know that how easy it is.
Because this is like a troll 10 times.
It is. And I just think, you know what? If that's what makes you happy in life, but it's just for me, it takes away from all of the hard work that I put in.
But why should someone else's actions affect your opinions? Is that your way? I mean, personally, okay, we're not talking about sending pictures of appendages here, but I like to engage with these people. But that's in public, not necessarily in private.
Yeah, well, in private, it feels like a very unsafe space. And when you have situations like the chap that knew where it works, suddenly it doesn't feel.
No,
you don't want to be as ballsy about it. Maybe that's not the right choice of words given the content.
Okay, but what have you learnt? What have you learnt, and what advice would you give the people watching?
About social media, I think be careful about how much of yourself you give to your social media. And I don't mean that just on a mental health point of view, but what information you're giving out. Learn from my mistakes, and just be careful about how you interact with those people, because it can go badly.
And it can be positive. I mean, you said you've got 4 properties, 1 landlord. Do you think this is just the tip of the iceberg?
Yeah, but equally, for my own kind of personal development, I wouldn't be sat here if I hadn't done my social media.
Queen of TikTok.
You wouldn't have known who I was. Oh. So, it's elevated my career to a different platform.
Final thoughts on social media for the boys and girls out there in estate and letting agency land?
Just get out on the video content, because the more you delay, the less impact it's going to have when you actually get to it, because you will get to it.
So there you go, boys and girls. I hope that these few people won't put you off continuing putting out your content. No. But you have to be aware of it, especially if you're a woman.
Yes.
Okay. But you can do that by mitigating what content you put out there, and also how you make yourself easily found. So I wish you well on that one.
Thank you.
The prats, that's just life, unfortunately. There's prats out there. I was going to say wankers, but I won't. That's just life. But if it gets your name out there, it's what about getting your personal brand out, then these are things you have to take rough and smooth. So
you do.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.